Brant Phillips here, and I want to welcome everybody to the show. What we have going on today, I have a very special guest, Jillian Sidoti. Jillian, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So everybody, Jillian is a securities attorney, and she's going to help us. We're going to dive into kind of the world of ways to safely raise private money, do it legally, and avoid some of the troublesome and very serious, SEC violations that we all too often see real estate investors commit. So, yeah, with that, Jillian, thanks for coming on. Why don't you just kind of give everybody a quick introduction about yourself and who you are, and we'll get into this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all of you for watching this video. I appreciate it, and if I can answer any questions after the fact, we'll give you my contact information and provide that to you. So yeah, I mean, you made a great point, Brant, about like people who are violating securities laws. It is no joke. And so what I really try to focus on in my practice is helping people figure out what's the best way to effectively and legally raise capital. Because if you don't have one, it ruins the whole thing. You can be as legal as you want, but if you're not effective in raising capital, who cares? And if you're effective but not legal, the SEC or the state securities boards can take that all away from you, and we don't want to see that happen. And from my end, before I was an attorney that helped real estate entrepreneurs with figuring out how to raise capital, I was actually a person out there raising capital and doing deals, and that's how I started off my career. I started off my career much like a lot of your listeners, watchers out there. I had a deal. I was trying to raise capital for it. I was just going around and asking friends and family, hey, can you invest in this deal? And, one day I was told, oh, you can't do that. You can't just go around and ask people to raise money. You have to have paperwork. You have to have these things. You got to follow securities laws. And, my response was a very typical real estate entrepreneur response, which is like, but I'm not selling securities. Yep. I'm just having people invest in my real estate, only to then realize that there was this whole world that had opened up to me.
Yeah. So, and that's, we've met before and I've interviewed you in the past, and that's what I like, not only, for yourself as an attorney, that you've got a background in real estate investing. I like, if my bookkeeper's done some real estate deals, or my accountant's done some real estate deals, and, they're just better able to understand and empathize, with, what we as real estate investors are going through. So,
sure.
Yeah. So give everyone just kind of a Cliff Notes overview or introduction. What is the SEC? And what is a security, and what do we not know? What does the average kind of starting newbie real estate investor, what do they need to know about the SEC and about securities?
Sure. So here's the thing. So the first thing we need to know about the SEC is that you're not too small for them. That's really, really key. Like a lot of times I get people who say, well, they're not going to care about me because I only have raised, X amount of dollars, and that's not enough for them to care. And you got to get yourself out of that mindset right away, because people who raise a little amount of capital are what I call low-hanging fruit. That's real easy for the SEC to pick off. They're usually not sophisticated to understand that they need to hire an attorney right away, and that this is going to cost them a lot of money. And it might even be easy money for the SEC to go after because it's not offshore, all of these things. So never think that you're too small for the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. And also don't think you're too small for the state securities boards as well. I mean, I saw a guy go to prison over $74,000. So go to prison, not just get a civil violation. Now, look, I got to tell you, just violating the law in and of itself is not going to send you to prison. It might get you fined, but it's not going to send you to prison. You have to have intent to commit a crime in order to get sent to prison, of course. But, don't put yourself in that position. Especially if you're being warned and you've been warned, right? So what's the first thing we got to look at? what is a security? When do these laws apply to us? When do we have to worry about this? And the thing I want you to think about is there's a test. It's a 4-pronged test. And it's number 1, is there an investment of money? Number 2, is there more than one investor? Number 3, do the investors who invested expect profits? And 4, is the efforts through a promoter, meaning are you doing the work on behalf of your investor? Are you actually raising money from them? So if you say yes to all 4 of those, then you're selling a security. And so we'll take, raising money to buy a note as an example. Like, I have a note, it's a $300,000 note. I want to go out and buy that note with 3 of my friends who are each going to put in $100,000. And then I'm going to collect all the payments from the note. I'm going to I'm going to distribute all the profits from the note. Then that's the sale of a security right there. You had an investment of money. You had more than one investor, even though it was just 3 of your friends. They all had the expectations of profits, and that you were going to take care of them. All 4 are there. So those are the things you want to look at first and foremost, and that determines whether or not you're actually in securities law.
Yeah, and that's the kind of, very similar what we're talking about is these are, for the most part, people are watching this are, single family residential real estate investors for the most part, and they've got a property that they want to buy for $100,000 or $200,000. They want to fix it up, they want to flip it, so they are wanting to raise money for that, and they check all 4 boxes of the criteria you mentioned. I know number 3 you mentioned profit, but to clarify, I think that means earning a simple, interest return on that
any return. Yeah, it's profit to them for sure. You're absolutely right.
So what are some of the typical violations that you see people make? I know that, you mentioned the $74,000 example was probably who had some ill intent in that deal, but just people are making you and I both see it all the time, on social media, right? With what are some of the other ways or typical ways that you see people creating violations that they may not even know of?
So the biggest one I'm seeing right now, well, let me say the biggest one of all time is taking in the wrong investors. That's the biggest one of all time, because although it might not necessarily be illegal, it will definitely be dangerous to you in the future. All money is green, but not all investors are created equal, and not all investors are going to treat you the same, and not all investors are going to act the same. And so you really want to vet your investors as much as they vet your investment opportunity, because you're getting into a relationship with them, and you need to make sure that's going to be a decent relationship, not just for you, but for your other investors, because one investor can ruin it for everybody. So that overall is the worst mistake I see people make time and time again throughout history. The big mistake I'm seeing people make right now and continuing to make is paying people who are not licensed a commission or some other kind of compensation for raising capital for them. And one of the things you got to be aware of is to be compensated for raising capital, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else. You cannot be compensated for raising capital if you're not a licensed broker dealer. That does not mean a real estate broker. It means a securities broker. And if you're not licensed as such, you should not be making money or paying money to somebody who's not licensed for raising capital. And I see this happen all the time. And a lot of what happens is that there's one guy with a deal, and there's a lot of people out there who can raise capital, and they can't find deals. So they acquiesce to getting into somebody else's deal and bringing all their investors. And that's problematic. And that's been a huge issue, I would say, in the last 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. Those are great points. Yeah. I would just go back real quick. Yeah, it's true. A private lender, although they're technically a lender, it's pretty much partnership, right? And that is very important that you got to have all those tough kind of disclosure conversations about, hey, What are your exit strategies? How are you going to perform if things don't go right? Because sometimes if you've got it's a new relationship, things could be going great and it's still a bad relationship, right? Because they have a low risk tolerance, or they don't trust you or the market or the deal or whatever it is. And they can be an absolute nightmare.
Right.
So one
Well,
thing.
no, and that's a huge part of it. And the other thing is, you said something really awesome in there, which is about disclosure and all these scary disclosures. So knowing that, I want to back up for a second, knowing that we're selling a security now, what is your obligation? And your obligation is to disclose. Disclose all the material risks and material facts and everything that an investor would want to know in order to make an informed investment decision. And the thing I always get resistance on from especially new syndicators is that, oh, I don't want to tell them that because that doesn't sound good. And that doesn't, like, oh, they could lose all their money. They don't want to hear that. I don't want to tell them that. But look, I represent probably one of the biggest, most aggressive marketers in the world. And even he has to put out the greatest disclosures. A guy named Grant Cardone, who has very aggressive marketing, and yet what comes behind Grant Cardone are these really strong, investment documents that say you could lose all your money. Even if you invest with him, you could lose all your money. So these, like, if somebody like him can put that in front of investors, you certainly can too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for real quick. So if someone is not, they're not a fund, they're not registered with the SEC, they're just, Joe Schmo real estate investor.
Right.
So are you recommending that they put some type of disclosure statement together for someone who's going to invest with them, even
Absolutely.
if this is a high net worth individual and checks all those boxes?
Everyone. Yeah, everyone. And by the way, I love telling this one story about a client of mine in Texas who did a deal. He didn't do it right. He didn't provide the right disclosures. And then the state of Texas actually came after him. That's how he ended up in a relationship with me, because he came to me with his issues with the state of Texas. And one of the things he said to me is like, I don't know how to do that, like what to do. And I said, you can't go backwards. You can't like undo what you did, but what you can do is you can go forwards, and we can try to mitigate the damage. And so what we did was we put together a package of disclosures for the investors that said, these are all the bad things that could happen to your money. We already know you invested, but we're telling you this now so that you are aware of what the risk is with your investment. And he called each investor in one by one and said, look, I'm trying to do the right thing here. Would you please sign that you read this and recognize that these risks exist? And one of his investors came and signed the documents, left, called my client from his phone and said, I'm so impressed that you put that together, that I'd like to invest more money. So I assure you, like, it's not all bad. Like giving, the example I always use is like, if you see an offer online that says 18% low risk, guaranteed, safe and secure online, do you invest? No one ever says they invested, because it sounds too good to be true. So, take a step back and say, if it sounds too good to be true and people aren't investing, then what should you do instead? And what you should do instead is tell people what could happen for real. Be a Debbie Downer, just a little tiny bit.
Yeah. Well, it's you're being transparent, and
right.
And so, that's that we know. Well, you and I know some people who are new watching this. In case you don't know, you can't be using the words guaranteed. I know that's one of your pet peeves. Guaranteed, promise, no risk. What are some of these other buzzwords that we see people using? And we can't guarantee tomorrow, like there's a lot of risk. And I've joked around with private lenders before. I'm like, hey, here's what, what I recommend is I want you to look at this deal, and assume that everything that I've mentioned is going to go wrong. I could be the next Bernie Madoff, put all those things just in your mind and see if it's still a good deal. Meaning, looking at the security and all your investment and all that type of stuff, making sure you're comfortable with it, because at the end of the day, it's better. I'm sure is what we're saying here is to way over communicate all the potential bad things that probably never will happen, but just in case. And when you do that, like I found people trust you more.
Yeah,
It's
they do.
they
They do.
do. And another thing too, so when I first got started, going back to my, my story was whenever, I started out like a lot of real estate investors. I was I was borrowing hard money and going down that path for a long time, and borrowing hard money, refinancing, and private money. And then I really didn't even know anything about private money, but I knew about the concept of partnerships. So
Yeah.
I started, putting together partnerships and doing that for a while. And then I remember I read this magazine, Real Estate Investor Magazine, about private money, about this young kid who's like in his 20s, raising all this money, syndicate deals, doing apartment deals, commercial deals. And I'm like, man, that sounds pretty cool. So I went down just the rabbit hole. I'm like trying to raise as much money as I could, not knowing a thing at that time really about the SEC, not thinking I was going to do anything wrong. But I'll tell you what I ended up doing. A friend of mine, he and I were raising money together, and we said, hey, I think we better talk to somebody smarter than us to make sure we're not going to get in trouble and I'm not doing this the wrong way. So, what I want to kind of move into is, let's talk about some ways to effectively raise private money with and without being registered. And what we did at that time, we met with an attorney, paid him some money, sat down with them, said, hey, here's what we're doing. Are we going to get in trouble doing it? What do we need to change? And what do we need to stop? And, and long story short, what he basically told us, and it's kind of what I've always done and applied since then. He said, look, you can educate, you can provide information about the opportunity. He's like, but you can't, pitch and promote guaranteed interest rates and all this type of stuff. And you can't promote like in a security for people to invest. So that's always been my method of operation is educating people, and you and I talked about it. I wrote a book called Private Lender Playbook to educate people. I don't say, hey, invest with me. I'm not offering you any opportunity. Here's some information. Now, if, high net worth individuals happen to reach out and approach me, then that's a different conversation. But so let's talk about that. What are some ways that people can safely raise private money, and what you've seen to be effective?
Okay, so what are some ways that people can raise private money? The first and foremost thing is that you've already kind of talked about it, right? It's the education-based marketing. To me, and I know we're talking about the world of both private lending and real estate, which are symbiotic, right? They're one and the same. Right. But with that being said, to me, in my opinion, and I think it's true, there's only two people in this world: people who are in real estate investing and people who want to be in real estate investing. And that's it. Everybody wants to be in real estate investing. They just don't know how. They don't have the time. They don't have the wherewithal. I think about the, especially nowadays, the busy emergency room doctor. Like, that guy does not have time to go vet deals. Save your emails or questions of, oh, I know this guy who's an ER doctor and he's a real estate. Like, I don't want to hear about it. Like, I'm using it as an example.
Right.
So, but you have these people. I mean, there's all kinds of people from all kinds of walks of life who just don't have the time to get into really vetting deals, or they have a fear factor, and you can take away that fear factor. That could be a huge talent of yours, where you don't tell people that it's easy and this is all we have to do and blah, 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 blah. No, you actually go the opposite way. You show them that you know how to do it. You give them that comfort. Yeah. And in giving them that comfort, you're building a relationship of a potential investor. So, not everybody's going to be your investor. You just got to find the right people to be your investor, and you got to treat them. As a matter of fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to read what I said to everybody today at our meeting for our law firm. And I asked all my attorneys, are you giving value? And I'm talking about before the attorney-client relationship. And you all out there should be thinking about the same thing too before the investor-investee relationship. Are you giving value? And if you just go with that attitude forward, I promise you, you will start getting investors coming to you instead of you having to go to the investors.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's all about lead with value, right? And so I've seen way too many. This is what it turned me off like when I started going to networking events 12, 13 years ago. And these guys are up there. We were going to IRA events, right? And these real estate investors are up there pitching a deal. And they reeked of desperation, did not put out this vibe of being trustworthy or very successful. And I'm like, good Lord, who would want to invest with this person? And I had deals that I needed funded, but I was like, I didn't want to go up there and be like that. So even going way back, I would just get up and say, hey, my name is Brant. Here's what I do. If you like to talk and get to know each other, we can go from there. Yeah. So let's talk about, we agree, right? Like just educate people, lead with value, answer questions, show them some of the pitfalls, some of all the things that can go wrong. Just be transparent. When have you seen it is whenever a real estate investor needs to give you a call to say, hey, Jillian, I think I need to get registered. I need to create a fund. When is that gap? When does that gap need to be bridged versus, a guy doing 4 or 5 deals a year versus how many deals a year? When do you see when is a good time for them to, call someone like yourself? And go
I always tell people, I mean, first of all, they can always come to me for education, free education. They can find me, in various locations around the interwebs and get whatever they need before they call me. And I want them to get whatever they need from where they call it. I don't want them wasting their time, and I don't want them wasting my time talking to me about something that might not be a good relationship right now, right?
Yeah.
So when does that relationship make sense? When does it make sense for you to engage me to put together these documents for you? And it makes sense when you're like, look, I want to raise more than $500,000 this year. I want to go out. I want to blow it out of the park. I want to lend on X amount of properties this year. I want to buy X amount of properties, whatever it might be. You're not going to be able to accomplish that with your own money then, and you have to go out and raise at least $500,000. You should be calling me, and we should be talking about how to put these deals together to make them work for you.
Great. So let me see here. I got a couple, just kind of call them kind of quick fire questions.
Sure.
So should an investor ever prepare their own loan documents and paperwork for their private lenders?
I think in reality, you can probably, if you're going to rinse and repeat with your loan lenders, what you can probably do is get one solid, good document from a lawyer. And I prefer you go to a lawyer because especially if you have a disclosure document that's supposed to match a loan agreement, that's supposed to match a deed of trust or a mortgage or whatever. I don't know how you're doing it or what you're doing it. But you should go to an attorney at least one time and get that template done for you, customized to what it is that you want to do.
Really? Yeah. I thought you were going to say absolutely not. Because I talked to a friend of mine the other day, and that's what he does, and he does 40, 50 deals a year. I think he's been using the same template for like 7, 8 years now. And I always use a real estate attorney just for my lender's peace of mind. There's changes in laws and things like that. So that's been my practice. I kind of preach that whenever I talk about our deals. So.
Well, here's the thing, like this is under the assumption that you're not doing high volume, right? That you're only doing a couple of, deals per year and you're rinsing and repeating. If you're building an actual machine and you have a factory of this going on, then you have to have an attorney on, standby at all times because you don't know what's going to come up. So I'm really addressing that with the whole, like, you need to have a well-written first round of documents for the purposes of people who are not doing a lot of volume. And also, you should be calling me if you're going out to raise at least $500,000 a year from outside investors, because then you need to have those properly written disclosure documents. And you should never, ever, never use a template, never write your own PPM, ever, never have somebody who tells you that they know how to do it, but they're not exactly a securities attorney. It is a very specialized area of work. It's a specialized area of law, and you really need somebody who knows what they're doing. And I'll tell you right now, you need the controlling document when you're raising capital from investors is not actually the private placement memorandum. The controlling document is the operating agreement. And most investors don't know that, and most sponsors aren't even aware of that, because they think, oh, the private placement is the disclosure, that needs to be right, that needs everything. But honestly, the private placement memorandum is just the story. The actual legal document is the operating agreement. And I can't tell you how many times I've received from, a client saying, hey, would you review this investment document for me? And I open the operating agreement. It doesn't even match what it says in the private placement memorandum. And the investors only read the private placement memorandum, or not even the whole thing. They just read the summary of the private placement memorandum, didn't read the operating agreement at all, and had no idea what they were really entering into. And I've seen really experienced securities attorneys write this junk before. So as an issuer, as a sponsor, as a person who's going out there to raise capital, the number one thing you should do after you get your documents from your attorney is read that operating agreement and make sure it matches the private placement. It matches your intents.
Yeah. Okay, really, really good information. Really good information. Yeah, so another quick question. Title company closings.
Yeah.
Like always, right?
Yeah.
What are exceptions to that?
I don't think there's an exception. Like, I think it's what if you have an issue with title later on? I don't know. I think that's the best money ever spent, because there can be property issues that go back 100 years that you can't even undo.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I just get these questions from people, and I'm like, yeah, what's the reason you wouldn't think about doing that?
Because you're cheap, but that's okay. So am I.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jillian, I think that's all I wanted to cover, and just give some, everyone kind of like we said, just a Cliff Notes version of what this looks like, what this is all about. Guys, if you're out there and you feel like you may be raising more than $500,000 or doing something that may be a violation, search up Jillian. She's like, I've searched you up. You're all over the internet. I agree. And plus we'll include all your contact info in here. The disclosure statement, guys, you need to have a disclosure statement. So maybe reach out to Jillian about helping you put that together. Is that a good place as kind of a starting point?
I would be honored if you called me. And we have some for people who are doing smaller deals, less than $500,000, and you want something customized that you can give to your mom, your dad, your uncle, your cousin, your best friend, whoever's investing with you on a one-on-one deal, and you want to put your best foot forward. Call me. I think I have the solution for you, and we'll work that out.
Great. So you're all over the internet. Where's the best place for them to go to? And I will be posting all that information as well.
Yeah. You know what? I would love it if you guys would actually join us on our private Facebook group. It's Crowdfundinglawyers private Facebook group. And the reason why is because I'm very, very good about updating, doing little videos, and adding content there almost daily. So that is the best place to find us right now. And of course, you can always find us at crowdfundinglawyers.net on the interweb. And we'll help you out.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Jill. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and experience with our listeners and viewers of the show.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Take care.